Well, once more, unto the breach, here we go on the Meat and Potato Show, conservative talk and awesome rock. And we are filming here at our ambush studios here in Worcester, Massachusetts, and continuing the candidate interviews since we've been doing since 2010, our 5th year here. Just doing this, it's absolutely fantastic and amazing that we get to meet so many great people. We had Cindy Nguyen here earlier today. We have great candidates coming up over the weeks ahead here on the Meat and Potato Show. And it is my honor and pleasure to welcome once more another great candidate running for City Council here in the Worcester, Massachusetts area. We'll talk about the district. Bill Coleman. Bill, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for inviting me.
Speak right into the microphone, my bro.
Thanks for inviting me. Now, not only we're running for City Council at large, I'm running for mayor.
There you go.
So
you saw the Mike Gaffney sign.
Yeah, I saw it was a great landmark to come up here. But it was a nice little. I know this area well, but I'm thinking I always came in from the Grafton Street side. When you come up Puritan Ave. But anyway, this is great to be here. I'm great to have this opportunity to talk about my campaign, talk about issues, covering the country.
Go ahead.
And, I'm running for City Council, and I need people who have Facebook friends in the city of Worcester, Massachusetts, to contact them. And after you hear what I have to say, you want to tell them to consider giving me a vote. We need votes. We just had a September 8th preliminary election, and some people call it primary, but it's a preliminary because it's not partisan, supposedly. And we had less than 10% of the voters come out.
This is a problem. That's right. Go ahead, sir.
10%, they said closer to 11, it was actually 10%. But what really happened was, out of 92,000 eligible American citizens who could cast a vote, they say about 11,000 came out. The top vote getter got 5,700 votes. I got 2,000 votes. But it was, and they say it was the day after Labor Day, it was hot. A lot of people didn't want to get involved in the process.
I don't buy that.
Yeah,
the weather thing, I don't buy it.
I don't buy it either, but the thing is, 5,700 people cast ballots for one person, and that person was beating their chest, the current mayor, and he had his people, they got out, and he's beating his chest saying, I'm king of the hill. And I think that there's a sleeping giant within the Worcester community regarding the power of the electorate. Now, I've run for office for a while in Worcester, and have tried to break the proverbial back of and the glass ceiling in some areas. And I do say, and not in a racial issue, but the last time Worcester elected a black man to any office in the city was in 1936.
Wow. And
before that, interestingly enough about Worcester, we had elected 2 black men to city council before 1920. One was elected from 1903 to 1905, and his name was George Alfred Busby. He was elected, he was originally from Barbados. He ran for city council 6 times in the late 1800s, finally won in 2003, in 1903. He served from 1903 to 1905. And then in 1916, we had a guy named Charles E. Scott, and he served on the council from 1917 until he died in office in 1938. As a matter of fact, when they described his death, because they considered him the dean of the council at that time. And we had a form of government that had a board of aldermen that consisted of 11 members, and then we had a common council that consisted of 39 people who represented different wards and precincts in the city. When Charles E. Scott died in September of 1938, the city shut down. He worked as a trainer, as they used to call him a rubber, and that means he would help train the sports teams up at the College of the Holy Cross. And Babe Ruth would come to town to see Holy Cross baseball players play. And Babe would say, Charlie, can you give me a rub down? And he always gave Babe Ruth a rub down. And many well-known sports figures at that time would come to Worcester, and this little guy, Charles E. Scott, would give him a rub down and took care of the teams. And he was just a very lovable man. On the council, he fought hard for sports in our public schools. He was the one that introduced showers in our public schools. But we're going back to you look at 1916 to 1938. And sometime in 1932, he ran for state senate as a Democrat, and he won the Democratic nomination for state senate. He would have been a state senator. And what happened was he was standing on Harrington Corner across from City Hall in downtown Worcester, Main and Harrington Corner, and he was attacked by a mob of folks who came in from Princeton, Massachusetts, who were members of the Ku Klux Klan on a Sunday afternoon. And he and his son were beat so badly that he had to stay in the hospital throughout the rest of the campaign. And what ended up happening was the sheriff at the time was a Republican. He won the final election by a short vote count. And it would have been historic because when George Alfred Busby in 1903 and Charles E. Scott in 1917 won public office, only less than 1/10 of African Americans throughout the United States of America had the legal right to vote. And here we are in Worcester, Massachusetts, electing 2 black men 60 years before Boston, 70 years before Providence, and newspapers all over the country that were black-owned newspapers wrote about this phenomenon that was happening in Worcester. Worcester was breaking the ice. Now, since 1936, when this last election happened, we haven't elected a black man to any public office, although 35 have tried. MBAs, PhDs, highly qualified people. And they would run up into a lot of different issues. And when I first started running for office, it came out of a background of working in Washington, D.C. And first I'll tell that I was born in Philadelphia. I came up in Worcester in 1973. I was studying to be a Roman Catholic priest. I was studying with a group of priests called the La Salette Fathers. And they have a missionary house down at Attleboro, Mass. But they had 2 houses on Massachusetts Avenue and Drury Lane off Salisbury Street. So when I arrived, I studied at the College of the Holy Cross. I studied at Worcester State University. And I was very active. But there was a time where I was supposed to go off to Rome. And they were going to send me to Rome to finish my seminary studies. But I had this chance to work in Washington. And I took it. And working for Senator Ed Brooke, who was the first African American elected to the United States Senate from Massachusetts, a Republican, elected in 1964. He served in 1979 when then Paul Tsongas won the final election, and Senator Brooke left politics. And we were in close contact for many years, attending various functions, and Senator Brooke just passed away in 2014, in December of 2014. It was a great loss to our nation, but it was history. It was history when I worked for him in Washington. Many of the things that we take commonplace were bills on housing, education, health care that the senator had put through. And we had Senator Ted Kennedy, Senator Ed Brooke, we had everything in Washington. And I remember the senator writing countless letters of recommendation for military appointments to West Point, Annapolis, Mass Maritime Academy, the Air Force Academy, and it was a lot of things. So all those things shaped who I am as an individual, and my commitment to activities in Worcester, where I think back, and I was recognized nationally in 1998 for starting a program called Cribs for Kids to address the issue of infant mortality in our city. As an industrial city, we have a tremendous amount. We're very rated high on infant mortality. That means that 8 babies out of 1,000 that are born in the city of Worcester barely make it to 1 year of age.
Right.
And it's a horrible thing, and there's studies being done, and people are being involved, and we're having conversations and discussions. But we're coming up to the need for pre-gestational education. That means basically before people even begin to think about having children, that they need to think about what it really involves. You don't smoke, you don't drink. Right now, within the babies being born, we have an extremely high rate of autism. And we're studying that and how that affects. And I've been an educator. I just retired from teaching at UMass Amherst, and I was out at UMass Amherst for another 20 years. And then I've been recently, I college lecture, I tour around the country, and I talk to communities about available grants that can benefit their communities and help people get engaged in a lot of different issues and involvement in their community. Now somebody else will pay for it. But now I was teaching recently at some of the schools in Worcester, and I do like preschool, first grade, second grade, but I've been teaching in some of the high schools. And the high schools are pretty interesting because, you know, a lot of high school kids, they have a lot of opportunities put before them, and they don't take advantage of them. And when they're in their senior year, looking to go to a college, they end up settling. When I know at UMass Amherst, I wrote scholarships, full-fledged scholarships, room, board, books, tuition, stipend, weekly stipend, computer, academic support for 4 years. I wrote those scholarships for young people to go to UMass, and I've also assisted in writing scholarships for young people to go to small Christian colleges that may be away from Massachusetts. And the one thing that you'll learn is the students educated in public schools in Massachusetts are in demand in colleges and schools all over the country. It's what we do in our public school system.
What an amazing history. Thank you so much. That is absolutely fantastic what you just described here. I have never heard of a candidate, I've been doing this a long time, I've never heard a candidate talk about the history of a candidacy, not only your own, but throughout their region, their district, their area. I've never heard that before. This is an absolutely amazing, thank you so much, sir, for giving me that information.
Well,
I never even knew that. In fact, sir, I've been to city council meetings. Yeah, it's a white guy's club. It really is. Well, it's a white woman's club as well, but it really is. Yeah, we've got Rivera there. We do have the Latino community. I don't want to use the term, is it racist? I'm just wondering, I think I'm asking a macro question here. What is it? Why?
I don't know. It's a question that's interesting enough because when I look at the voter turnouts, and I looked at the African American community has 13,000 votes, the Latino community has 26,000 potential votes. We're talking about American citizens over the age of 18 who could vote.
Yeah.
And less than 3% come out to vote. You know, I mean, Soraya Rivera lives in Ward 8, Ward 4. But
is this more like, I know Worcester, I'm going to use the term, is this kind of a Worcesterism? It's like, people don't care, and not just people don't care, but it crosses all demographic lines, it crosses all racial lines. People are like, I don't care.
But you know something, the people who need the political attention the most are the wards and precincts who don't vote. I mean, we look at Ward 8, Precinct 4, September 8th, 2015 political election. The polling place was open for 12 hours. 50 people voted in 12 hours. Out of a potential of 2,300, 50 people voted. Now, I'm planning on writing...
These are the people that are actually registered. Only 50 people actually show up.
These are people who were actually registered. 50 people showed up in a 12-hour period.
That is a travesty.
Now, the whole thing is, I'm going to meet those 50 people. I mean, everything is public when you vote. And I'm going to go to Ward 8, Precinct 4, and go to every one of those 50 doors. I hit 200 doors in 2 hours anyway. But I want to talk to these people. I want to thank them for coming out to vote, whether they voted for me or not. I did well in that area, but I mean, whether they voted for me or not, I want to shake those 50 people's hands. I want to write an article that I'll publish somewhere, and I'll list the names of the 50 people and call them great Americans. The 50 that voted in Ward 8, Precinct 4.
And we just finished an entire year of the Worcester City put together this whole forum on bias and race in Worcester.
Right, race and dialogue.
Right. Meat and Potatoes was there. We filmed practically every single one of them. We were there, and Turtle Boy wrote about it. I wrote about it. Worcester Magazine, In City Worcester, tons of articles. There was tons of exposure on that. But you just hit upon something. Only 50 people. Now, if we sit there and we say that there's this racism going on in the city, there's this miscommunication going on in the city. I filmed this, I watched this, I'm sorry, maybe it's because I'm white, but it's because I disagreed with that. I was like, wait a minute, I go to Worcester City Council meetings. I do these interviews. I have that access. I go out and seek that access. But you just said out of all the potential voters, only 50 people voted. Is it apathy? Never mind the racism thing. Is it apathy? What is, again, I'm asking a macro question here. What is this apathy? We talk about how various minority groups are not represented, but yet they actually are. They just don't go out there and do it.
And I'll tell you, having been a candidate, having attended all the black churches, having been invited to speak at all the black churches, and I've spoken everywhere. Black churches, neighborhood watch groups, the whole bit. And then you get some people who would say, well, I don't vote because I don't want to do jury duty. I get a felony conviction or a misdemeanor. In Massachusetts, you can register to vote if you've had a past misdemeanor
Sure.
or a felony, but people don't
Yeah,
realize
we're an
that.
open state as far as that, right?
We get 300 people every single year who move to Worcester who have spent some time incarcerated in a prison. And they don't realize for 2 years that they can actually vote. They can participate. And even though they've changed their life, paid their debt to society, and I'm talking about all kinds of folks.
Sure.
But these folks need to be a part of government. Now, the sad thing
Yeah,
is,
you have a voice. You have a purpose in your life. Go out and do that. Brings me back to what I was saying to Cindy. Cindy was talking about lack of communication. I don't see that. I go to city council meetings. I do these interviews. Everything's on social media. Everything's out there. Websites are out there. Again, I'm asking a larger macro question. Why? Why don't these other people get out there? Is it laziness? Is it apathy? What is
you got to think now, in our last 4 elections, 8 years, the same 12,000 voters have controlled the election. And that pretty much started in 1991. I ran for city council. I got 11,000 votes.
right?
Top vote getter back then, I think, was George Levin, and he got like 19,000 votes. But we had 75 polling places. 75 polling places in the city. You could walk literally down the end of your street and cast a vote.
Right.
More people turned out. In the mid-90s, we cut that to 50. Okay, and then now we're down to 35 polling places.
Right now.
Where a lot of polling places are combined together. You get 2 or 3 precincts, and they're not that accessible. Now, there's a couple of recommendations somebody could make, like getting the bus company to offer certain buses that say we stop at this polling place, and that polling place. And I might file a petition asking if the city council would work with the bus company to provide buses to offer polling transportation
Sure,
on
why
election
not?
day. I mean, some people, they vote far away from where they live, so they don't go out and vote. Now, in Massachusetts, you can vote 30 days now. You can vote 30 days before the election. Just go to City Hall, which sometimes is more convenient. You go upstairs, like up until the Friday before the election, and you can cast your ballot by filling out an absentee ballot application. I mean, there's very limited excuses for people participating in the vote. The biggest thing is that we look at is in 1995, things did change drastically, and people just stopped going to the polls to vote. And I always carry voter registration forms with me, but people say I don't want to do jury duty, I don't want to get mailings in the house, I just want to be left alone, the whole bit. But then when they look at their tax bills and they realize what they're paying on a quarterly basis for water and sewage.
And ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something. You might not pay attention to politics. Politics always pays attention to you.
Yeah, and that's true. I mean, the government is provided by those who participate.
Exactly.
I mean, it's a spectator sport. And, you can scream and yell and say, well, they're raising my taxes on this, they're cutting back my
And go
bus
out and
fees
do
on this.
something.
You can make a difference by voting. But the thing is, voting for people, if you look at our city council, it hasn't changed much over the years. We haven't had a whole
Yeah,
lot.
Carney Luxon's been in there since what? I think.
1979.
Yeah, that's right. I think an asteroid landed on the planet and killed off the dinosaurs.
But, and the thing, and look, these people make they make $30,000 a year, $28,000 to city council, $35,000 to the mayor. They get free tickets to everything at the Hanover. Look, I don't fault them. They're elected. People just give them a ton of stuff. That's why I proposed that we have a full-time mayor and that we raise the next salary of the next mayor to $75,000 so we can have a full-time mayor. And some people balked at that.
Well, that's a great point. I want to talk about the city manager's position. The city manager seems to be the guy that runs everything. It seems like the city council, okay, the city council, the mayor's position, okay. But the city manager is actually the person that pulls the levers and makes everything run here.
Well,
So then what's the point of having a council and a mayor's position?
Well, because of our government, which is Plan E, and just give a brief little history lesson. In 1940, up until 1948, we had a strong mayor, and we had a common council and board of aldermen. And we had, I mean, it was corruption like crazy. And the old Brahmins in Worcester were fearful of the emerging Irish that were taking over all the political seats. And what they saw back then is if you wanted a job at the school committee, and you might be making $1,500 a year, well, you had to pay $1,500 to get that position in the school committee. It was no qualification-based thing.
Yeah, it was a graft.
It was all this. But then we voted by referendum to change our form of government to Plan E, which means that you have an executive running the city, but you have your chief political officer, which is the mayor. And then we had 9 city councilors. In 1983, we had another referendum to change our form of government to add 5 district councilors. So, you know, right now we have 11 city councilors. We've got 5 and 6. 6 at large, and then we have 5 district city councilors. Now, the issue with city government, the way it works is when someone, a business, an individual, family, presents something to the city council, an improvement to the city or a challenge, the city council will listen to it, to a petition, and then they will refer it to a subcommittee of the city council. At the subcommittee of the city council where it is assigned, it is vented through a representative from the city administration's office that will look at the legal ramifications of implementing or not implementing this particular proposal. And then from there, it gets referred back to the city council for a final vote. Now, what has happened recently is our city council subcommittees don't meet on a regular basis. Things get held up in committee for years.
Mm-hmm.
There was an issue that came up, held up in committee for more than, oh God, how many years was it? It was 500 and something days. Michael Gaffney addressed the issue when I filed a petition asking that we raise the